So those stabilizing people that you hold on to or forces in your life have a tendency to make you realize you're probably getting over-rotated on whatever you're kind of focused on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take away the uncertainty, but it takes away the anxiety.
But yeah, John Lebaron, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been long overdue. We've talked a lot about, getting this set up and having this go for quite some time. And you're someone who's been nice enough to be a mentor to me, to walk me through certain things that I was facing and decisions that I've made in my life. And based on our conversations, I'm like, hey, the listeners need to hear this too. So appreciate you coming on and being willing to talk. If you don't mind, maybe you could share like who you are and kind of how we met and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you bet. I'm a huge Brett Russell fan, and I don't know how many listeners you have. It might just be my mom this time around. So
it might just be my mom too.
Hi,
so
Mom.
That works.
Hi, Brett's mom. Yeah. So I work at a company called Pattern, and I met Brett through that company. And I've always admired your tenacity, your curiosity. You're great at listening, your hustle, and I usually would just see you wandering around with a giant gallon of water, trying to drink it, or admiring a motorcycle, or talking about running, or just crushing numbers. Hey. And so it's been a pleasure, and I'm super excited to support you however I can.
Yeah, I mean it's been such a fun journey being here, and just being able to learn from all the different people who work here. And to your point, go down to the garage, see your motorcycles and all that stuff. And it's been fun. And this company has been amazing to me, and just such a great opportunity to work for Pattern. So that's the first time I've ever said the name of this company that I work for. I've alluded to it. I've always said,
secret's out now.
Secret's out now. Everyone, I work for Pattern. But so John is the CRO of Pattern. He's being very humble, but great leader. And that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on. And so we could just have a conversation. But I do want to start off with this because you brought up motorcycles. Tell me what you think about this quote. Motorcycles are not just machines, but are vessels of freedom, carriers of stories, and teachers of life lessons.
Yeah. I like it. I agree. Who said it?
It says anonymous, so who knows?
ChatGPT.
Yeah, you could take it. But the question would be, when did motorcycles first enter your life, and what role have they played in your sense of freedom and adventure?
Yeah. They first entered my life when I was probably around 11 years old. I had a friend, his family was all into dirt bikes, and they had this crappy, it wasn't even like a dirt bike, it was almost like a moped. And they took me out to the West Desert in Utah, and we went around, and I crashed it, as is going to become a recurring theme in this story probably. And I think I still have a little scar from just like the peg went straight into my shin bone and started bleeding and killed. And I couldn't start it because I actually didn't know motorcycles, but I figured it out. And then I eventually kind of made it back into camp. I somehow took a wrong turn. And then I didn't ride another motorcycle for 20 years. I don't know, a long time. And maybe not quite that long, maybe 15 years. But I married into a family and that loves motorcycles. And my father-in-law fixes motorcycles. He builds motorcycles. He rides motorcycles. Both dirt bikes and road bikes. And so when we first got married, my wife and I asked to borrow one of his motorcycles. I had never done one before, but I went and took the road test, and that started like a long and glorious infatuation. And then I guess just to make the story as fast as possible, I ended up buying my first Harley Davidson and rode it out to California. And I was living in the Bay Area and rode it all through there, the hills and Skyline Drive, and all these beautiful areas down in Santa Cruz and up into San Francisco. So it was great. It actually became a commuter bike for me as well. When we moved to Utah from the Bay Area, I laid it down coming back along Highway 50 and totaled the bike, unfortunately. And my wife was 8 months pregnant, 9 months pregnant at the time. And she made me promise I would not ask for a motorcycle again for 7 years. And I don't know, that seems like a weird biblical test or something like that. So I told her I would not. And then I broke my promise a few years in and asked her for a dirt bike. Because then I figured at least I wouldn't get taken out. It would be my own. It would be my own demise, basically, my own making. Any crashes. And so she reluctantly agreed to that. And so that started with that. And then I got dirt bikes for my kids. So my daughters and sons ride dirt bikes up at our cabin and just out again, West Desert, Eagle Mountain, single track up in Timpanogos or American Fork Canyon. And then finally, after my long-awaited 7 years, bought another road bike, bought a Harley Davidson. Kind of like a cruiser bike, and then the next year or 2 years later, ended up buying another road bike. That's just more of a kind of a round town bike. It's not a touring bike. So anyway, that is the short story. So we have electric dirt bikes, we have gas powered 4-stroke dirt bikes, we've got some other cruisers, and we do a lot of mountain biking as well. So anything on 2 wheels makes me pretty happy.
That's your go-to.
Yeah.
What about it specifically makes you like? What gets you going? Like, what's your favorite thing getting out on the road?
I mean, I think 2 things, and again, this piece does apply somewhat to even honestly a bicycle, which is there's just a certain amount of adrenaline that comes from going fast and being a little bit out of control, and it puts you in touch, I guess, with a little bit of your wilder side, and I think to that point as well, it makes you acutely aware of your mortality. Mm-hmm. Like when you're on a motorcycle, and again or a dirt bike or a mountain bike to some degree, your skin, the hair on your skin goes up. And I always do ride with a helmet. I believe it. Not always, I guess, but almost always. I'm doing a quick jaunt through the neighborhood.
Yeah. I remember sometimes I put nails under your helmet.
But the hair rises on your body, and you feel the temperature. You feel the gradations in temperature and the fluctuations. You smell smells that you don't smell in a car when you're out. If you lay it down, it hurts. You feel it. Right. And so there's just that certain amount of it, and you have to be present. I'm not someone on a bicycle or a motorcycle that like puts in earbuds or something like that and tunes things out. I want to be hyper aware. I do play a radio on my touring bike, I guess, but I want to be aware of what's actually happening. I want to be able to hear things. I want to smell things, and that can be it's much harder to kind of tune out that way. And so those are some of the things, like you don't always get to control much of what's happening on a bike, but you do control the fact that you have to be present. Yeah. And I live about 1,000 feet above the valley floor where we work, in a neighborhood that requires me to kind of go up almost like a mountain basically every day. Yeah. So going up and down that mountain every day is just beautiful. You see wildlife, you smell wildlife, and you get to feel the temperature on your back. Cold or hot or rain or whatever it is. Yeah. And it has a great way that I haven't found in other hobbies, so to speak, of bringing you really in tune with some pretty big common denominators in your life. So.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And that's actually something that my wife and I, Allie, talk about a lot. Is she always makes fun of me because I always tell her, like, running is the perfect metaphor for life. And to your point, like, motorcycles could also be a really good metaphor for life. But the reason I say running is, for me, is because, yes, it like forces you to be present in that moment. There's not a lot of other things you can think about when you're, 10 miles into a run and your body's aching. And you're like, that's the only thing that my mind's focused on. But it forces you to just like focus in the moment and be there. And, when I have the opportunity to run outside, it's amazing because like there's the mountains. Sometimes I'm in Arizona, like I see like cactuses, like all these things. And it forces you to be in the moment. And what I'm coming to understand is like trying to be present it's a challenge. It's definitely something that's hard. But these lessons I've learned from running and these other things that I'm trying to do that force you to be in the moment at the time, kind of help like ease some of the anxiety of thinking about the future or thinking about the past and like what you wish you could have done to change something.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what the role of being, or like what the idea of being present has played in your life with, like, have you always been good at like recognizing when you're in the moment, or has that been something that you've had to train yourself to?
I mean, I don't even think I'm good at it, to be honest. I mean, the motorcycle is kind of, I guess, a forcing function of that. But no, I'm totally susceptible and guilty of not being present, of getting distracted, of getting pulled into, could be social media, could be music, could be work, honestly, is a huge distraction that pulls you away from being in the present. So yeah, I actually don't think that I'm that good at it per se. I will say that, there are very few things, I guess, like depending on the culture that you grew up with or how you kind of started, your family situation, whatever. I mean, I grew up family of 7 siblings, and a very traditional, I grew up in Utah, very traditional kind of religious upbringing. And it was amazing. But there was also a very collectivist mindset in the family of, you're not allowed to kind of like advocate for yourself, or it's frowned upon. And so I think, maybe someone who grew up, I think Asian cultures are very kind of like this as well. And maybe other types of religious cultures where it's like, it's really about preserving the whole versus allowing the individual really to be super assertive. And so I think, just going back, I guess, to the earlier comments about motorcycles, like it's an inherently dangerous thing. Again, I laid my bike down. I should have, by all means, been much more injured or even dead laying down a motorcycle going 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And that was my 5th child. And so it's an incredibly selfish thing to do. It's a selfish hobby because the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
And I'm sure with your wife, I don't know if your listeners know that she's a pilot, like there's that kind of aspect of it, right? Where it's like, that's dangerous. But it's a good reminder for me as well that I have to be selfish sometimes. I have to do things for me, and I'm not doing it. I can't live my life trying to protect everything else that's around me. I have to have certain things that are honestly indulgences. And this happens to be the biggest indulgence of my life, of doing something that brings me a lot of joy. When I go out in the morning and get on a motorcycle or even see the motorcycle, it is like, it's a hit of dopamine. It's one of the happiest times in my day when I get to leave work and I can't be distracted anymore. I guess, other than in my mind, I guess, of just leaving the parking lot on 2 wheels and feeling this, hearing the sounds, smelling the smells, all those sorts of things, and coming back into, this. So being present brings a certain amount of relief. And I don't mean relief like anxiety relief. I mean contrast relief. It brings in clarity into the actual moment. And so I think giving yourself permission, and being present actually gives you permission as well to kind of like set aside the things of the past or set aside the things of the future and really just enjoy what's happening then. And I think the age of smartphones and, again, social media or whatever it is, it's very, very hard, but I just had this experience last night. We went to dinner with my family. My daughter turned 18 and she was like, please do not bring the whole family to the dinner. And I'm like, this is our family. What are you talking about? She's like, it's just not going to go well. And sure enough, my 9-year-old son screwed around with chopsticks, sticking them in his mouth. And like, I took him away and like sends him down like this shame spiral. And he just wants to now withdraw, which is actually now negatively impacting my daughter's experience and celebrating her 18th birthday. Anyways, I just
sounds like a classic family dinner.
Oh yeah, this is classic. Just can't win. But I just took him outside and just, again, his whole thing was to like withdraw and go down like this sulking kind of spiral. And we were able to sit down on the ground. It's probably 30 degrees outside. Like it's cold here. And just able to like, instead of me worrying about what's happening in the other room or how's my family going to affect, did they get the food yet? Did they wear the, I'm able to push all that aside and just be with him for a minute. And how are you feeling? And how did that make you feel when I did that? And are you okay? And do you know that I love you? And I'm sorry for whatever I did. And just be there with him right in that moment. Look him in the eyes and have him look in my eyes. It's a sacred, the present is very sacred. And so, again, I'm not great at doing it, but a few chances you have, it feels good.
Yeah. And it's definitely important to recognize those. I've been harping a lot on this podcast and like to everyone I talk to about journaling.
Yeah.
That's a practice I've adopted since early last year. And so every night I'll just try and write out, it's like the little things in the day that you don't think mean anything.
Yeah.
That you're going to want to remember, a few weeks, months down the road.
Yeah.
Like it's so fun. I'll go back and look at my journal and be like, what was my head at like May of last year? Like, what was I thinking? And I'll just go, and sometimes it's like, oh yeah, well, I went to Maverick and got a drink and then went up to go see my family or something like that. Yeah. It's just like these little moments that you forget if you're not being present. And it's easier said than done. Like, by no means am I perfect at it. But it is something I think can provide like a lot of satisfaction to your life and fulfillment. If you can find little things, like if it is a motorcycle or like having conversations with family, or these little things that like you recognize, no, this is what it's at like right now. This is what's important.
And what are your tricks for staying in the present? It's
tough. I think journaling is probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
But I think other things like the gym, like when I go and exercise, the only thing I'm thinking about in that moment, if I'm deadlifting, is lifting 315 pounds, because nothing else matters at that time. It's like, but these little things that kind of force me to be on the present. And I might have mentioned this in a couple episodes, but my wife and I, we have this list that we call dementia. And so it's a shared note. And it's just in our little Apple Notes, but we share it. And throughout the day, like if I see something I want to tell her, I'll add it to dementia. Nice. And then when we get together at dinner,
you go through the list.
We go through the list and we just talk about them.
Yeah, that's great.
We've been doing it since we've been dating, and that small little practice has helped me like look for things throughout the day where I'm like, what would Allie want to know? How my day went, or like what is something that she'd laugh at? And so like I'm always looking for those things, and I think that's a practice that helps me just be in the moment and recognize that, like, there's a lot going on in the world, but that's okay. Like, I can't control everything. I can just control what goes on in my day. Totally. And that helps. Also, like, one of my favorite things is just calling family members, because in that moment, it's like what you were saying with your son. Like, you give them your full attention, you talk to them, you're there for them, and like just being there for other people. And so like reaching out, just being like, hey, I was thinking about you. Like, I think a lot of people also, I've realized, most people don't get that. Like, most people don't have people who reach out to them. And so I take those opportunities very seriously. And like, if I'm calling my brother, I'm calling my brother just to talk to him.
Yeah.
And I think those are just a few things, but running is the other big one. I didn't want to mention it because like that's what I talk about half the time of this podcast.
Oh, you run?
Yeah. Well, Wofford for Boston, but but yeah, so all those little things. And I think that's part of this next question I'm going to ask you is like, it's hard to find things that work for each individual person because everyone's different. And so your love for motorcycles might not resonate with someone who is a data nerd or, something like that. Or it's hard to find your passion, but it's important to explore them. And you and I have talked about a few times, I've come to you with like questions about a career transition. And I came to you for advice about like marriage and like these other changes that were going on and how to navigate them. But something I hear in my audience like ask me a lot is like they struggle with finding their calling. And you can say calling or passion, interests, really anything like that. But people just seem to have a hard time exploring the things that they are interested in, because I don't know if it's because of fear, if they don't think like they can make any money with the thing that they are interested in, or like I started playing piano early this year and realized within 3 lessons, I was like, this is not for me. Like, this is not my jam. But I had to like take that step and at least try it because it was an interest of mine.
Yeah.
And my question would be to you is like, if someone is looking for a calling in life, what advice do you have for people who are searching for that? Or maybe I can rephrase the question actually. How did you find your calling in life? And what advice would you give someone who's still searching for theirs?
I am objectively the worst person probably to answer this question. So we probably ought to just skip it and like go to a different one. I don't think I found my calling. I don't think that I'm any kind of a model of like, whatever, having arrived at anywhere.
Yeah.
I will say I love my life and I love what I do. And the ways I decide to spend my time bring me a lot of joy.
Yeah.
And I think that's honestly, I live a life of privilege, and I was born in where I was born, and the language I speak, and the country that I live in, and the education I had, and the upbringing I had those are all huge tailwinds at my back.
Yeah.
And so I don't take any of that lightly, because I recognize that it's a huge anomaly in the world that we live in. I will say I don't also necessarily subscribe that everyone has like a calling that they have to go find. I don't think everyone has like a spouse that they're supposed to marry or anything like that. So I guess that might be somewhat undermining to the question, the thesis as a whole. But, at a high level, I do agree that people generally, if they were to honestly reflect, and I would include myself here, in how they spend their time, it is not always a recipe for being happy anyway, or being proud, or being able to look yourself in the mirror. And I think I'm not an advocate of being reckless, but I am an advocate of being introspective and like I said earlier, like somewhat selfish around like, I did know that for whatever reasons, riding motorcycles made me ridiculously happy. I literally, sometimes I'm like crying or have a grin ear to ear in the morning riding.
Yeah.
I don't know why. There's actually not a reason that makes a ton of sense, but someone might have that same feeling of exhilaration playing the piano or golfing or, I don't know, organizing flowers or something like that.
Doing this podcast.
Yeah, doing a podcast.
Like, I love doing this.
So I think it is about recognizing what actually brings you joy. And sometimes what brings us joy is what is expected to bring us joy, but sometimes it's not. And I think it's okay to be honest with yourself. If it doesn't, like piano, it's like, maybe it seemed like it would bring me joy. I see other people having joy. It seems like I would like to pat myself on the back. In the same way that's like qualifying for Boston in a marathon, I think that would bring me joy. And then all of a sudden you're like 4 runs deep and you're like, no, this is not joy.
Maybe not.
6-minute miles is not joy for me. I'm not going to do it, So
it's pure pain.
Yeah, totally. And so I think you just have to be somewhat ruthless about acknowledging what does and what does not kind of bring you joy.
Yeah.
And then I think you and I have talked about this before. It was like, I don't know what in my wiring makes me this way. I think I'm a generally pretty content person. And I do love my job, and I do love my wife and my family. And it does feel like most people I talk to either don't like their job or don't like their spouse.
Right.
And so if I can say yes to both of those questions, I'm largely like, I'm kind of 1%, top 1%. Like I don't need a lot of other things in my life to like fill that void, absent motorcycles, I guess. But, and so I think part of it is an attitude of like, and I think it's fair. It's like, painting really brings me joy. It's good judgment to ask yourself, can I provide for the obligations I've signed up for?
Yeah.
Maybe kids, maybe a wife, maybe elderly parents or something, like doing this thing full time.
Yeah.
And the answer usually is no. in the same way that I can't provide for my family riding motorcycles all day, even though that brings me a lot of joy.
It's true.
So I do think the counterpoint or counterbalance of like trying to have good judgment and being responsible while also having these indulgences, and then having an attitude that permeates that's like, I think I can be happy doing this, and look for the goodness versus being drawn to the negative or to the things that are not working, is great. But again, this is probably somewhat worthless advice coming from someone who's led a pretty privileged life. It's like, it's easy for me to say that.
Yeah.
But I will say I've had some pretty terrible phases of my life, and I think I was still largely pretty content and happy during those phases too. So
yeah, I mean, if the rules for having a good life are you love your job and you love your wife, then I think we're doing pretty good, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, you spend so much time doing it, so it's what it is. And I don't think that's maybe it's my calling.
Yeah.
Maybe being a dad, maybe being a husband, maybe being a CRO is my calling. I don't think so, because it doesn't
I mean, I kind of agree with that, because it's almost a loaded question. And now, like, as you were explaining that, I'm like thinking through what you're talking about. And one of my traits that I think I have is I am a curious person. Like, I always love to learn. That's been me since I was a little kid. I'd like learn about the planets, and then my parents would be like at a party, "Hey, tell everyone the planets of the solar system," and it was like a party trick. Like, I always wanted to learn, and the point of that is like I'm always curious about things. I always try and look into, piano or starting a podcast, and I found that I really like doing this, so I keep doing it.
Yeah.
But I think finding your calling isn't necessarily like you're going to be an astronaut or you're going to be a police officer or whatever that is. I think finding your calling is just exploring the world, because it has so much to offer, and finding what you like and what works for you, what makes you happy or content, or just gives you a little break from the day, because there is a lot of difficulty that the world brings too. Like, life is not easy, and you even said it, like, you've gone through periods of your life where it's been challenging, and but you were still able to find content during those times. And I'm curious, what were you able, like, is there an experience that you can think back to where you were going through either a difficult situation or circumstances were hard, and you were still able to keep a positive attitude? Because I've noticed that about you, is you always have a positive attitude, and we've talked about that before, because I'm like, I don't know how you do it, but that is a trait that I want, and I want to be able to, like, no matter what our family's going through, I want my kids to be like, oh, he's still got a smile on his face. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or any experiences you'd be willing to share.
Yeah, again, I feel like hopefully you get better guests on the podcast at some point. It's like
it only goes.
My gosh! Like I said, my daughter turned 18 yesterday, and we have all these, like, my wife did a great job of like printing out these pictures from each year of her life, and we kind of hung them up on like these lights. It was just so fun and gorgeous. But there's nothing more sobering to look that far back and be like, holy cow! And I guess a couple of things happened, right? Like, one was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could do this over. Like, I feel like I failed my daughter. She's already 18. She's going to be leaving the home. And I'm like, I feel like I was like the worst dad. Yeah, exactly.
Let's go back.
But to that point too, it's like when I talk to my daughter about growing up, she has all these memories of me getting mad at her. I'm like, what? Like, this is her like lived experience. And I'm like, that is so funny. Like, I don't think of myself as an angry person or like I'm mad all the time, but maybe she has this like experience for her that I'm like always disappointed or mad or angry at it or something like that. And so that's why I'll just say, like, take whatever I say with like a super grain of salt.
She knows she knows you love her.
Anyway, I think back to your example, I could definitely go into some super sad experiences in my life, but I'll spare the listeners. And just like, I was at lunch yesterday or 2 days ago with some friends, and we have this, like, for whatever reason, I really like grouchy people, and certain people that drive other people just like bonkers are very endearing to me. And anyway, they were getting together. Like, we went to go hang out with this person that we all collectively agree we don't like this person. And we know that you like this person. And so we just said, in the spirit of Johnny, we're going to like give this person another shot, because I hadn't heard hadn't seen that person for a while. And my buddy said within 2 minutes, he was already like driving me crazy. And it
Didn't
was
last long.
I don't know how you do it. He said, I don't do well with people who are like shameless self-promoters, or that like walk in and like have to, like one up you, or have to tell you what the latest job or the latest thing they've bought, or like just like that type of whatever showmanship or insecurity, or whatever you want to kind of call it. And I definitely recognize this in that person, but I don't know why it doesn't bug me. It makes me, and this is probably like some weird mental disorder that I have, but
we're learning a lot about John.
Yeah, sorry, turn to therapy. It makes me like it's endearing for whatever reason, and the reason it's endearing is because I recognize the deep insecurity in the person, which is like, I think we're all insecure at some level. But the second, there's a certain wonder that person doesn't understand how to like control. But it's like if you go up to a 4 or 5 year old and they just want to show you all the stuff, or they want to show you everything you got for Christmas. And you can tell in their eyes that they like, it's braggadocious. It's like,
it's like the most exciting thing.
But it's so exciting for them. And you won't like hold it against them for being like, dude, come on. Like, do you know how many kids there are that didn't get, and you're showing me 20 presents? And it's like,
a Nerf gun, really?
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't want to fault them for it, because they literally are just so excited about it.
Right.
Now, that's definitely me giving the very best intention and assumption about like the joy that is coming from them doing it, versus like maybe the other side of me that's like, why are you having to like one up and show, and like this is like little man syndrome sort of thing. So I don't know. I think it's just more like being able to kind of see that part of them, that magic that's still within them, that makes them want to brag about stuff or be whatever. And I think the same things about grouchy people. I don't know why. It's like the prickliest people sometimes I love the most. And maybe it's like some weird thing that I'm trying to win them over or something, or maybe it's just a recognition that like, in a world that tells you you are supposed to have decorum and you're supposed to be like buttoned up and put together, and just to show up in a way that's like you're antagonistic and super grouchy and negative all the time, it just makes me smile inside and makes me kind of like laugh a little bit that they're just showing up grouchy.
Oh, I like that. And I mean, like, what I like about that story is it tells people that like, or it shows that everybody is different and they have their own personalities. And you can either look at someone who's grouchy and be like, I don't want to go spend time with that grouchy guy. Or you can go be like, I wonder why he's all grouchy all the time. Like, I'm going to go try and pick his brain and ask him questions.
Yeah.
Because he's different. Like, and you could say the same thing about someone who would be overly optimistic or whatever the circumstance might be. But I think one thing I'm coming to understand is there is like beauty in the fact that everyone is different and that everyone's personality isn't the same, because if it was, it would be a pretty boring life.
Yeah.
And so going to lunch with a grouchy person every now and then might make things a little bit more fun. And it might just give you a little bit different perspective. And I think also like going back to finding your calling and other things like that, it means a lot of exposing yourself to different situations and different people. And the only way you can find your calling is if you're willing to put yourself in situations that you might be uncomfortable with a grouchy person. Or one of the biggest things for me was Pattern would send me to trade shows, and the first couple I was terrified to go up to the first few booths. But as soon as you do it, and it's like, you know what, all these people are here and they're just people.
Yeah.
I can connect to someone and just have a conversation.
Well, there's a certain gamesmanship of like trying to get, anytime you walk up to someone in an environment like that, their defenses are up.
Oh yeah.
And so just be like, you look like you need a coffee. You want a free coffee? Like, I think you showed me like, and it's like,
I give everyone
genius.
Starbucks cards.
Yeah, it's genius, because it's just like, now the wall's down. Now you can talk about what you're really thinking about. And it's like, who cares if they buy something from you or like whatever, or set up a meeting? It's just like, now you got back to the whole present. Like, you got a chance to interact with someone, and like make their day or make them smile. And it's like, it's pretty rare. And I don't know. I'm reading a lot on whatever social media stuff about toxic positivity. And I do think there is like, for sure, there's merit in it. But I don't know. I'm okay looking at life through rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
I think that's like, people are like, you don't want to look at, like, let's be real. Why are you looking through everything? And it's like, listen, like, that's what social media is. Everything is rose-colored glasses.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what the algorithm is. But there's actually goodness in that too. In like, I actually want my kids to remember me through rose-colored glasses, because I didn't show up the way I wanted to. I was not always in my best light. I want my employees to like give me at least some level of a benefit of a doubt, because I don't always show up well, and I'm like deeply flawed human being. And I actually don't want to remember my own spouse or my own kids, or this interview as like a negative thing. I want to be able to like that. We're going to go off the rails. We're like, it's not going to work out the way we thought it was going to be. But largely, I want my memories to have a tint of rose in them, versus trying to like remember the things that were just meh, or that were sucky. I'd rather try to pick out the good stuff that happens. So
I love that. I actually interviewed someone last night on this podcast. His name is John Nelson. On Instagram, he has this huge page with like 100,000 followers. He's a pilot. His name's It's Pilot John. But in his bio, he has something where he's like, I'm the CHO, which is the Chief Hype Officer.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you got to tell me about that. Like, where's that coming from? What is the Chief Hype Officer? And he's like, one thing I've realized is that people just tend to gravitate towards negativity.
Yeah.
And then they don't have someone who's like getting them excited about life.
Totally.
And so he's like, I always want to try and get people excited about life. He's like, I understand that the glass is half full or half empty, but I'm not looking at it that way. He's like, it's all about perspective. And it was actually a really interesting like conversation, because I kind of asked him as a joke. I was like, tell me, why did you put that in your bio? Like, why are you the Chief Hype Officer? But I think his meaning behind it was kind of what you're saying. Like, if you look for the negativity in things, you're going to find it. But if you look for the positive, you also find it.
Yeah.
My wife, I'm so proud of her for this. She calls me on her way home from, she was coming back from a flight. She's like, I think I just saw a Lamborghini on the road. And I was like, that's awesome, babe. Like, good job. And then we were driving down the road a little bit later in the day, and we saw another one. I was like, babe, there's another Lamborghini.
She's manifesting.
And she's like, there's another one. And then we're on the freeway, and boom, another Lamborghini. So it's like 3. Wow. But it's because we were looking for them.
Yeah.
And because we live in Draper. But, you know, but yeah, so like, I think that's a good way to look at things, is like, you know, there is negativity in the world. And if you focus on that, you'll probably have a pretty negative view of the world.
And I think we're actually kind of drawn to it. I do think, I mean, I joke that like the KSL comment boards are like the dregs of humanity, but it's just like, I rarely actually go on social media, but sometimes, especially Facebook, I don't know what it is. It's like, so many people are just negative. It's like they've just this axe to grind. And I'm like, how is this helping? Like, why are you really, but I do think it's natural. Just, I guess, one more anecdote. Like, we have this tradition in my family, when it's someone's birthday, we all go around the table and we say what we love about the person.
Yeah.
And now it's been 18 years of my daughter doing this. It fails like 90% of the time. It actually makes you feel worse, because, and I don't know why. It cracks me up.
Exactly,
it's like,
what you're talking
as soon
about.
as one of the kids like, wow, I mean, I love them because they always make me food. And it's like, well, that's about you. Like, you talk about what? Like, about them? And it's like, wow, I mean, they always leave their dishes out. I'm like, what do you, like, this is part of the thing. Like, what are you talking about? It's this is not a roast. Like, you're supposed to.
This isn't a roast.
And then it's like, can I skip? Can you come back to me? And I'm like, you literally can't think of one thing you love about your sister. Anyway, it's just, I do think the negative, for whatever reason, it comes easier than the positive. And so I think we all have to be harbingers of good things, and have to try to force the positive, whatever we can find, and push it on people, be their hype people, because they probably are not surrounded by people, you know, their teachers, their classmates, whomever, largely people they're not surrounded by people who are hyping them.
Yeah.
And so especially those people we love and that are close to us or employees or whomever, if you can be a hyped person to them, that might be the nicest thing that they've heard all day or all month or all year.
Absolutely.
And so, never underestimate that power of positivity for sure.
Yeah. And it's something that I'm learning how to more incorporate into my life. And going back to what you're asking about, like, how do you stay present? Another thing that I do is every day in the morning, either before work or like as soon as I get into the office, I will journal just 3 things that I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
I used to do it in a book, but the books are hard, so it's all digital now. But just that simple practice, like today I wrote, I woke up at 4:30. I went outside in the basement, and the moon was lighting up the entire basement. And like I was like, I've never seen it this bright in here at 4:30. And then as soon as I was coming back from the gym, I looked to my right, and the mountains were like pink and red and orange and all these beautiful colors. And I was like, this is insane that this is how I start my morning.
Yeah.
Like that is something I'm grateful for.
Yeah, totally.
But that just helps me, like, 1, start the day with positivity. And then 2, find ways that I can be just grateful for the things that I have. It doesn't make me feel like I need to, go get a new car or work super hard and go in debt to get a house or whatever that might be. It's like, just be happy with what you got, because you'd be surprised. You have more than you think. And obviously there's people out there who are less fortunate, and we wish we could help those people. And even those people, though, who have the fewest possessions or some of the worst circumstances, they find ways that they can be happy. And I think there's lessons that we can take from that too, because they found things that they can be happy about with what they have.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing, but I just think those little moments of gratitude and positivity, like you're saying, can really change how you go throughout your day and ultimately help you become a better person.
Yeah. Sure.
This next question, and I know we're almost at time here, so we could be brief, but it kind of ties into some of what we've been talking about with like positivity, gratitude, being present, and it's navigating change and uncertainty. That's something I've been asked a lot about on this podcast, and I'm like, I'm 26. I've gone through very few life changes. I've gone through times of uncertainty, like with my health conditions and stuff, but like I'm 26. Like there's other people out there who have more experience. And in your life, like how have you learned to embrace change and navigate times of uncertainty? And if you want to add on there, like how have you remained positive during those situations as well?
Oh man. I think kind of what you were talking about earlier, which is having people around you that really are your advocates, and could be family members, could be friends, could be colleagues, whatever. Yeah. But there is a definite stabilizing effect that allows you to wade through uncertainty. It's kind of like if you were walking out in a, I don't know, swampy lake or something like that, and you couldn't see the bottom, but you had, something to kind of hold on to as you were making your way through. That the difference of having something to hold on to would be really, really game changing.
Yeah.
And again, I recognize there are people that just do not have that, what we would call safety net. They might rely on the government or not even anyone.
Yeah.
If you can't make your car payment, you lose your car. You can't call a friend. Right. You can't call your parents. Parents are dead. Parents are in prison. You don't even know who your parents are. Like there are those life existences that are they happen every day. But I think about the biggest transitions I've had in my life, whether they're health crises, marriages, divorces, remarriages, kids, sicknesses, death, all this sorts of stuff, premature stuff. The crazy thing is A, if you have those stabilizing forces or people in your life and you're wrestling with this crazy decision, where should I go to grad school? I have 2 different job offers. I have, whatever it is. The end of the day, what are they actually going to say? They're probably going to say it doesn't matter. We love you. Whatever decision you make.
Yeah.
You want to go to this school or this school? It's going to be great no matter what.
Yeah.
If you want to take this job or this job, it's great no matter what. If you want to adopt or if you want to do fertility treatments, we love you either way. I think it's going to work out well.
Right.
So those stabilizing people that you hold on to or forces in your life have a tendency to make you realize you're probably getting over-rotated on whatever you're kind of focused on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take away the uncertainty, but it takes away the anxiety. So I think that's a really important piece. And then the second one, I think the thing that's helped me navigate through it is realizing, like, no offense, I'm just not that important. Like, life is going to go on no matter what decision I make for myself and for the people around me. And kind of the best thing that I can do is look for the places where make the decisions where I'll be kind of the best fit, or where the contribution that I'm able to make is the most meaningful to the people that I'm with. They could be my employers, they could be my employees, they could be my kids, they could be my wife. Because at the end of the day that's all we really have, are the people around us and the interactions that we have with them. And I definitely have not gotten it perfect, but those are some of the ways that I've tried to deal with that ambiguity in my life, and I've certainly had a lot of it, but it's largely worked out in my favor.
Yeah, I mean, it really is super important, like having people in your corner who believe in you. Like my wife's dad, Tim, he would always say, you need to be your own biggest cheerleader. Like you need to be cheering yourself on. But along with that was also like the tagline, but rest assured, like I'm going to be on the sideline with you. And my wife and I, we talk about that a lot. Like you need to believe in yourself more than anyone else ever does, but don't ever forget that, like, I'm here too. And like, we're going to be fighting this, whatever it is, uncertainty, together. And like right now, like I just found out, like I have some fertility issues and stuff. And, there's a lot of uncertainty going on with that. And it's like, we can either just bury our heads in the sand and give up, or it's like, let's just take action and see what we can do together.
Yeah.
But I think it's important being able to find those people who believe in you. And it's hard because, like you said, some people don't have the opportunity to find those people who actually believe, love, and support them. Which kind of leads me to my next question. And feel free to, if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. But has deity or God played a role in times of uncertainty in your life?
Yeah. The short answer is absolutely. I think the longer answer is like, what does that actually mean? And who is God? And how has the concept of God evolved for me? And how has the concept of the divine, continued to kind of manifest it? And so that's been a journey worthy probably of a different like podcast or whatever. But the short answer is I do believe that there are forces bigger than ourselves at play. And that whether you call it God or you call it the universe or you call it whatever,
anything like that.
There are forces conspiring for us on our behalf and against us. And I think, to your maybe comment earlier, like it's either going to work out or it's not going to work out. But it's always going to be okay.
Yeah.
And just going back to this concept of looking at these 18 years of my daughter over her life, and I'm like, God, I wish I could do it again, but I also think I would probably just do it the same or worse, probably. So maybe just like, let's take it how we got it, because she's an amazing woman. But yeah, I have to. My relationship with the divine has always been, I'm going to say what I want, and I'm going to let it play out, and I'm going to be happy with however it plays out. Yeah. And I've had deeply, deeply personal and sacred experiences on that front. And I would say they were not sacred or personal because it worked out in my favor. The ones that have not worked out in my favor have been equally sacred to me. And so I think that's, the uncertainty is not decided in the outcome. The uncertainty is decided in the process.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap. That's I think there's a lot to that. And I think understanding that the process is a journey, and there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, but how you navigate it and how you hold yourself during those times, I think is more important than, when life is all good and things are going your way. In those times of uncertainty, I think that's when it boils down to, okay, who am I? What do I believe in? What are my values? And it's going to be okay in the end. I just have to endure this process.
Yeah.
I always bring up the analogy of steel, right? It gets stronger the more it goes and all that stuff. And the more you work on it, it gets stronger. And same is with us. I firmly believe that the more we are put through tests and challenges and trials, or whatever you want to call it, times of uncertainty, we become better people in the end.
Yeah.
So, John, I seriously appreciate you doing this today.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah. I hope I can get you on another episode, but I'm going to have to go back and listen to this one a couple times. Anything else you want to share before we jump off?
No, thanks. Thanks for chatting. And again, regardless of the future of the podcast or the past, we're here in the present, man. It's been a pleasure, and I'm glad to be spending this time with you right now.
I'm going to go get some Chick-fil-A for us.
All right, good. All right, thanks.
Thanks, man.